All right, we are live and recording.
Yay.
Okay, call to order. What's the exact time?
8:06.
8:06.
6 a.m.
8:06 a.m. Yep. I'll just quickly go over, so we have Jennifer, Shaniqua, Eli, Cara, Kevin, myself, and Casey. So we have a quorum, everyone's here, and we have the sustainability coordinator, Julie, here as well. Is Cara joining us?
Yes, but I believe in person.
Oh my God.
No, Carolee.
I just want to say that we are both named Carol.
Oh,
Both
okay.
myself and Carolee are Carol,
Carol.
Okay.
not Carl,
Cara.
Carol.
Cara.
please.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I believe Carolee is joining us in person, which means we should make a seat, but I don't see her. And we will wait till she gets here. Because I didn't send her any link unless she, well, I did receive hundreds of emails while I was away. I'm going to check it out. So it's possible she didn't
And
send.
I saw her yesterday, she said she was gonna be.
You said you're coming in person?
Yes.
Okay, well, you
So,
can move on with the agenda. I can check through my emails to see if she said anything like, I can't come, or,
obviously, there's no public comment. So we'll move on to the agenda. I think,
Would you like me to text her?
sure.
the two things that we were gonna review were what you sent, the record example. And, this, I produced a draft application.
Mhm.
So, you have copies of this, or?
Nope, but I can make copies.
Sure.
Is that something that has been sent to me? That's from
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
That's what you created?
that's what I created.
Yes. Okay. Fine. But you can go over, if you want to move through the modifications to the agenda in minutes.
Sure. I looked over the minutes. I have one change,
Okay,
and that's basically, if I remember correctly, that a reappointment for a member was not necessarily 7 years. Like it was this, would be the same duration as whatever our original appointment, so,
The
Are you
the
sure?
reappointment is 7.
that's what I,
Regardless, like if you're appointed for 1 year now, your reappointment is 7.
it is 7, okay. I stand
so we're
corrected.
okay.
We're okay with that.
Okay.
So, I have no other comments. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes?
I'll just make one comment when I was doing it. I know who made the first motion, but the second motion, I kept have it so fast. And I think it was you, Casey.
What did I motion to do?
I think you motioned a second. It came from this end of the room. I heard second really fast, and I thought it was you. I wrote you. And I went back to the video, and I couldn't figure it
I'm
out at
happy
all.
to have done that.
Okay, okay. then we're
Unless
confirmed.
somebody else.
Unless somebody else did it, and I just, it's totally,
Yeah, I was over there.
I was busy typing, and I heard second, and it sounded like you, but then the video was different, you were motioning, you were sitting in opposite places.
We
And
can
you
sign
made,
it.
while I heard the second, you were making a hand motion of some sort, but you had made the first. So
Sorry to
I-
distract.
Yeah, I was like, now what, did you just second your own? No, couldn't, no, had no case. So, all right, so I was a little confused on that, but if we're good, we're good.
So, okay, is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Jen? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. No no's, no abstentions, passes unanimously.
Carolee just said she's running late.
Okay.
Okay, I'll walk through, we're gonna see this again. It's a motion here.
Should I go over the real estate transfer tax report
Yeah.
for
Okay,
the
fine.
agenda?
Okay, sure.
Okay, so You will see that we got the new annual update on the Ulster median sales price. The state puts that out. You can see it's up $50,000.
Hmm.
We are living that life here. So you'll see now that here forward until 4/6 of next year, we are now basing our real estate transfer tax on $425,000. So now the fee is assessed 1.25% of everything above 425,000. You'll see that in March, and right now I'm just looking on the blue side, our total sales were $17,637,589. There were 51 transfers, of which 39 were exempt, 12 of them were paid. That was 23.53% of transactions were subject to the tax. The average real estate transfer tax was $2,329.28. And our total transfer tax amount was $27,951.19. We earned 16 cents of interest from the county. I haven't connected yet with the city comptroller to see if we are gaining interest yet on our taxes, but we should be, so I still don't have that information. But to date now, just for that month, our revenue was $27,951.35. I split that up to 10% for management and stewardship, and so our total revenue total is $38,389.14. And then you can see on the back, obviously substantial change from February to March. I would surmise that that is because January and February, there were probably folks still in contract from before the tax going into place. Or maybe there's just a lot of people that buy homes in March. I have no idea. I won't really know that until we see like a year-over-year change. So that is where we are. Anyone have questions on that, concerns, comments? Great.
On the old business, since by July, we have to think about it another time, just keep that in mind to meet. Unless we keep doing this at 8 o'clock in the morning. So if your schedules are changing, you need it like in the evening, it'd be good to know. So, no? All right.
I can share it on the screen for the moment. I'm just still trying to find the local printer here in the building.
Okay. I guess you need to share on the screen.
Okay. Sorry.
All right, I mean,
Nope, I'll figure it out. Yeah.
oh, she's not gonna be listed here. Yes, she. Technology is great. I've already explained. I took two documents. The law, Kingston Community Preservation Act law. And I took the plan, uploaded it into a platform connected to ChatGPT. And I wrote a prompt about a paragraph long, saying, at a minimum, we gotta include this, help inform, a city council about at the front. It came up with this here. That's the way to do it. So one of the minimum things I did was, you have to have use of the name of the applicant, mailing address, email address, and a phone number, at least that. So then I talked about the project location, tax parcel ID. I specifically said tax parcel ID. Okay. And then there's the type of projects, so from the plan, you have this big checklist of projects that, you have to fall into the category, at least one of them. That's what came over here. And then they give a short project description. So, and then they need to justify what's the community benefit, the logic, the rationale. So then there was another type of resource on site that had, listed in the plan, water or wetland resources, agricultural resources, ecological resources, and cultural and recreational resources.
Sorry, that's the best I can do right now.
Okay, that'll work. So there it is, what they talk about, section 1, the bare bones, who are you? The project location, also part of that, and then this is actually specific to the plan, section 3, type of project that you would recommend the fund. Can you get on to the next? Yeah, section 4 on down. So there's the writing. I don't know how much writing we ask at this point. And I only say that because we're strictly an advisory board. So, we don't have teeth like other types of planning, like a planning board or a town board. We do have influence. But at a certain point, this gets kicked up to the Common Council. So I don't know if the Common Council wants a lot of paperwork, or they want to just start with something that can inform them and they can take it from there. That I'm unsure what they're looking for. We'll learn in time. And then section 5 is, like I said, it's along the line of the project description. Section 6 is something right out our plan. I don't know if we need section 7.
Grab those copies.
We have to go get a willing seller acknowledgement. It's good to know.
I was gonna say, I think that's the most important section, and we should expand on that and have some kind of acknowledgement from the landowner saying that they're willing to sell, even if it's just like a.
So,
Yes, I
or easement on it.
Yes, like a, yes, I know they're applying for this for this funding, and I'm for, these.
An acknowledgement from the
Landowner, yeah, because you don't want just random people trying to get somebody else's property on this.
Yeah, what happens if it goes all the way down the line and the landowner's like, I didn't know any of this was happening.
Right, exactly.
Like you're envisioning it like someone's like, oh, look at that perfect piece
Right.
of land we should preserve.
Yeah.
That we put it in an application but have never.
Right, so like,
Okay.
you also wanting to like buy land or something.
Or even just a neighbor who doesn't want the
Hi,
neighbor
Kara.
to sell.
Oh, hi there.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late.
No problem.
I think
Saved you the seat. Yeah, right next to you.
before we get to you, let's get your bearings. You jumped ahead,
I hope you would.
and Jen and I will talk about our initial versions of what an application would look like in this board. So we were talking about the willing seller acknowledgement. Basically, it's very important to get the landowner to have something in writing before we go ahead with anything.
Right, and I would change the title of that to say willing landowner acknowledgement, so that it can apply either sale or conservation easement.
Okay,
Um,
either sale or conservation easement.
I just want to ask with you sent in the form from New Homes, right? Did we take this into consideration when this was created?
No, I just saw it yesterday. We'll talk more about it later. Give a much more detailed form.
well, it is very important that you have a willing seller.
Yeah.
But I think putting it in here, initial application, is a little early in the game to be calling them a willing seller. I think it's great to say, to have some acknowledgement that the individual or family is willing to negotiate an easement or, as you said, possibly sale of the property, but it just seems very early in the process to be identifying them as a willing seller.
Just so you qualify that saying willing to negotiate a sale or an easement?
Do you guys want to offer the rationale that you just said?
Yeah, so basically, we were worried that some random person or neighbor who doesn't want their neighbor to sell is gonna try to put their neighbor's property on, you know, on this whole loop without actually ever getting, like, if they get through all this whole process and then the actual landowner's like, I don't even know what's going on here, like, what does my property mean? Oh, that seems really unlikely, but. But they, you know. I have seen people say, try to do stuff like that,
Yeah.
because they don't want, you know.
And then it ruins the relationship with the potential, partner, acquisition, yeah.
So what our attorney told us was that having a application like this triggers the process, that you are working with a willing landowner, but ours doesn't explicitly say, yes, no, or not yet conducted.
Yeah.
What about a previous question that asks, are you the owner of this property?
At the,
Okay.
And
in the
then,
beginning, when it's the
right,
address and tax
Right.
parcel and stuff.
and then.
Yes, that's
From
really
there,
important.
from there, it either. Can you have it that prompt, question, another question, if they say no, I'm not the owner, it prompts another question that says,
Then why are you here?
or,
It doesn't even.
are you a legal representative of the?
Yeah, it doesn't need to say anything further, because if the answer is no, then you lay it aside.
Right.
Okay. All right. We can do it that way.
Yeah.
That's good. And because we're essentially going to screen things for the common council.
Yeah.
And I was talking, just as you were talking, we're an advisory board.
Absolutely.
So there's no, how we're looked at, there's no contract, that comes out of this, or no agreement like with the planning board or zoning board of appeals. And so that gives us some leeway.
Right, right. What this board does is advise the city on, whether they would want to enter into a contract with a landowner.
Okay.
An option. Should there be an option for even if it says, if the person says no, and like if it's a tax sale parcel or something like that, it can still go through the process?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I mean, it's, so we can
There is,
still
like,
set
there
it
is
aside
no
as
owner.
something.
Yeah.
There's no owner, but it's good to know. It keeps us in the
Yeah.
loop.
Yep.
And also, because I know Julie mentioned like the paying back the bonds. So in that case, the city's the landowner, is that accurate? Like the parcel that was purchased? Does that mean,
Which person?
well, the
The
Wilbur,
Yeah, like Julie would be applying for that, right? And then she check out like
Yes.
this.
okay, like I am a representative of the city of Kingston,
Yeah.
okay. Mhm.
Well, I guess when Julie comes back, the copy in front of me, we can finish out what this draft application will look like. I noticed from yours, been busy the last 2 days, running around farmland. But you have a much more detail, you have a matrix that goes along with the application process.
No.
There was a matrix that you said, it was like a schedule of
Well, that is a completely separate document.
separate documents.
Yeah, that's an internal working document for the committee.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the application is actually very straightforward.
Yeah, the application itself, yeah.
The application's
is just so you have the basic details about the property, and as I said, it triggers that you're in the conversation and that you've assured that you're working with a willing landowner.
Okay. All right, I wasn't sure, I didn't get a chance to really study it, I thought that matrix kind of tied back in.
No, not at
Okay,
all, not at all.
no, I did remember seeing parts of it as being this kind of schedule.
Could we, sorry to interrupt, could we hear from Carol Lee before we go any further on the application? I'd love to get her experience on, and like take her.
Well, just let me finish out what I was saying, and then Kara and you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to go, but
Oh.
I was thinking that might help inform our application.
Okay, I just gonna finish out here, and Kara can chime in too. On section 8, you bring up the application again?
We don't have.
Everyone has.
Oh, you're up, yeah, that's all right. So we have several items, a map, a map showing the project location, photographs of the site, letters of support, and evidence of significance of the resources there, and a preliminary budget. Does that sound good to you from your experience?
What is this documentation for?
This is for the initial intake for
Oh, the initial
the
intake.
initial intake. So the common council will then see this.
Mhm.
It's not, you'd be the first ones to see it.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. We wouldn't probably include letters of support, but that's not a bad idea. Yeah, we usually have, I mean, we haven't had many instances yet. We've spent a lot of time identifying what our priorities are and negotiating with landowners.
Yep.
We haven't had too many opportunities to present anything to the board yet,
Okay,
believe it or not. It's a long, slow process. I think you're gonna be able to move faster than we have. So we have a narrative that describes the property in terms of these things that you've suggested, the resource significance, and, you know, any supporting information. So, yeah, I think that looks good.
okay, so letters of support might be a little premature at this point.
Well, so we keep our board abreast of what's happening with a project because sometimes the projects take a long time to complete.
Okay,
So we don't expect to take a project to our town board, have them vote on it, and it's done. I mean, it's a much more iterative process for us.
okay. All right, go on more about your experience about,
Well, first of all, I just want to say congratulations to all of you.
Thank you so much for being here.
I'm sorry I'm late, you know, I thought it was an 8 PM meeting until yesterday.
That's the middle of the night. Yeah, this is also the middle of the night.
So I didn't shift gears quite fast
Oh,
enough, but anyway.
We appreciate you being here.
So yes, congratulations, and I don't know if you all worked on getting the CPF passed.
Some folks.
A lot of the people on our committee were people who worked on getting it passed. I guess I can just sort of describe to you a little bit about what it's been like for us, and some of the things that we've learned along the way that may or may not be helpful to you. We spent almost the first year that we were aboard, learning about what the opportunities would be for us. We spent time meeting with the land trusts that are active in our area so that they became familiar with us and our board became familiar with them. And our board had a lot to learn about the conservation process in terms of how conservation easements work and what the various options were. We went back and read our community preservation plan very thoroughly because not everybody was familiar with it. People, we were the first ones, so we've been really learning as we go and understanding the law, because the law has some ambiguities in it that we have to figure out, and we're still figuring out. So I would highly recommend spending time on your, and maybe you're all already familiar with these things, but the reports that support your CPP and the details of your CPP, because you're touchstone all the time. And so it's not a report that just goes on the shelf. We spend a lot of time trying to sort out what our priorities would be. Our CPP includes 1,500 properties in the town of New Paltz, so, where do you start? So, I looked at your CPP and I saw that you have a map that shows you kind of where you're gonna work and what's available to you. That was something we did early on, and I sent that around for people to look at, and you have a similar map which color codes your high score properties. And for us, and I don't think this is as much of an issue for you, but for us, it was important to figure out where are there clusters of high scoring properties, because you don't want to kind of do a project that looks like this. It's not as meaningful in terms of conservation as if you can cluster properties that are a high priority. It has more conservation value that way. I think it's a little different for you, given the availability of land and where you want to focus. I think another thing that I've seen Gardner take a kind of different approach than us. We look at the scoring in the CPP as a valuable tool, but it doesn't really drive the boat quite as much as willing landowner. I mean, that's the key thing, is willing landowner. And we found that it's been difficult for us to find willing landowners, and I think it's a function of, we started in 2020. Land prices went like this. People felt like their land was worth a lot, which it is. But as a municipal body, we're bound, as it turns out the land trusts are too, to paying the appraised value, maybe a little over, but not a lot over.
We are as well.
Yeah, so that becomes a big limiting factor in a time when there's a really hot property market. I sent you a matrix, which I made up, which is kind of the steps in the process of going from thinking a property is interesting to actually completing a project. And I have to say, we don't follow that slavishly. I mean, we don't have to do step one before we do step three, but it does give you a sense of all the steps in the process. And there are a lot of steps in the process. So what our committee does for the most part, and I think you will too, is work on identifying what the priorities are and where you want to work with landowners, or where those willing landowners are. And it may be that you're far enough along that you already know exactly whose property you're interested in and who you want to work with. But for us, that's been a big part of the process, not just recommending to the board, but actually identifying those people and working with them and building up their trust and making a project happen. What we're wrestling with a little bit right now is, the law allows for 10% of, it doesn't say what it's 10% of, 10% for stewardship.
Right.
So what does that mean? Is it 10% of your whole fund? Is it 10% of the purchase price of the property? So we've decided amongst our committee that that's how we'll interpret it, that it'll be 10% of whatever the project costs. So we have a couple of irons in the fire, a couple of projects that are moving along. And one of them is a very small project where that 10% of the cost of the project probably doesn't work, because we know that with the Wallkill Valley Land Trust, who will hold the easement, there's a stewardship fund and fee of $10,000. This project may not even, make that 10%. So anyway, it's something to think about, how you want to interpret the 10%. I think tying it to the value of the property makes a lot of sense. But those are the kinds of questions that there's some ambiguity in the law and you have to figure out.
Yeah, one of the things that said, I just like, I can give you a copy of this, this is what we've done so far. I kind of just set it up, and it's not a dedicated fund yet, but just on paper, setting aside 10% every month.
That's another good way to do it.
So right now, we just know that like, we know what 10% of our entire amount is. But that's arbitrary.
Right, it's a choice.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
Yeah, but at least,
Well, this would give us, doing it this way gives you more flexibility for how you spend it, I think, than the way we've done it.
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't done it yet. We haven't been in a position to make a stewardship payment.
yeah, because that's one of the questions we had, is like, what does management stewardship really mean? Like, what can we do with that? What can we not do with that?
Right.
And you have an attorney that you're working with to interpret that?
Yes, and I have to say, she doesn't have a fixed answer on it. We've been working with Christine Shale, who has advised all the CPF towns.
Okay,
I can send you her contact information.
okay.
Another issue that's come up for us is that she has advised us that we cannot use CPF funds for doing appraisal, survey, and title work. So due diligence, right? You have to do those things, and you can't really negotiate with the landowner if you don't have an appraisal. So to date, on the projects we've worked with OSI or Scenic Hudson, and they have done the appraisal work for us, which is usually in the range of $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, for the Kingston Wilderness property that we bought, the same thing happened, City Hudson did the appraisal and the surveying and
Yeah, so,
the environmental.
so what we've, I think, learned is that if you get to the point where you can have your willing landowner sign a contract with the municipality that they're serious about going forward with this, I think once you've got a contract, then you could use CPF funds for an appraisal. But even then, it's really too late.
Yeah,
It's really too late.
Yeah.
So,
Is that spelled out in the law?
no, this is something that Christine told us.
That's our interpretation.
Yeah, and well, I'm working on unpacking that because it's really an obstacle.
Is that the interpretation of CPF in general or New Paltz specifics?
CPF in general.
Okay.
But
But
this is this attorney's interpretation.
Right.
yeah. But I'm working with OSI on trying to understand that better because it's too limiting.
Yeah.
It's the reason they I guess do it is that they don't want an overeager board spending a lot of money on appraisals on projects that aren't going to come to fruition.
What about, we had survey work done on a conservation easement that we put on property in Marlboro. And we got, money from Scenic Hudson for the survey. Got money from Scenic Hudson for the survey, but they had to sign the contract that's with Scenic Hudson that said, if I back out of this conservation easement, I will pay that back.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is there a way to
that's-
do
you-
that?
I think there are instances where you could do that,
Yeah.
and instances where the landowner would block.
Right,
And
Oh, yeah.
yes,
Yeah, if they-
I can't do that.
right,
Yeah.
but because then they get a free survey, basically, so.
Right. Right.
But if they're willing to sign that contract, that means they're more serious about going through with it.
Right, so CPF money would be used to pay for those things at time of closing. So that means, and what we're trying to do at New Paltz, is have a budget line for a couple of appraisals a year, let's say. And then the money can be shifted from the CPF to the town on closing.
so you have a line in the town's general fund?
That's what we don't yet, but that's where we're planning to go with it. So far, we've relied on the largesse of our land trust partners.
What is your target line item amount for that?
I think if we had $15,000-$20,000, that would be adequate. That would be more than adequate. That would pay for 2 appraisals.
What about environmental and survey?
Yeah. It's the same issue, but it's the same issue. It's the appraisal that's most expensive. Or, let's put it this way, it's not most expensive, the survey can be very expensive. But it's the appraisal that you need in order to figure out whether you're gonna be able to negotiate a project with the landowner.
Right.
If you don't have the appraisal, you have nothing to talk about.
Has this come up with DOS at all? Have they been consulted? It's part of New York State Department of State.
No.
And sometimes they issue advisory opinions. They have a slew of them on their website.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's a resource. I don't know if they, I can look, I don't know if they have this,
Advisory opinions on what?
all sorts of things. Well, say for example, our open meetings law thing, they have an interpretation of that. Thing that we reviewed at the last meeting.
Oh, you mean an interpretation of CPF?
Yeah,
Oh.
and you know, the specific issues we're discussing.
That might be a place to look. I haven't looked there.
Do you require a survey for every property?
That depends.
Okay.
It depends on how recently a survey's been done, depends on the complexity of the project.
It's the same for us,
Yeah.
land trust.
Yeah.
Kara, have you had any landlords come to you, the board, or has it all been the board reaching out?
Oh, that's a good question. Mostly it's been us reaching out, I know almost entirely. But that's also been kind of a choice that we made, was to figure out where our priorities were and then go and meet with landowners. We, last fall, we had a workshop for farmers in New Paltz that was sponsored by the Orange County Land Trust. To inform farmers in New Paltz about how conservation easements work and why it's a benefit and that kind of thing. And we had about a dozen farmers come, which was pretty good. We had one farmer come forward from that and we're actually in the process of developing a conservation easement for their farm. That's that very small project that we're working on. Gardner, has taken a different path, and it's interesting to me that it's been so productive. So they sent a letter to every landowner that was in the top 1%.
Wow.
And they've had 14 farmers come forward and say they were interested.
Wow.
We don't, I don't think we, I mean, we do have 14 farmers, but we would not have 14 farmers.
I talked to someone on the Town of Gardner's Community Preservation Fund, and she's gonna send me that letter, so I can forward that letter that they sent out to you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. It can't hurt. I mean, I think we'll do that too. I mean, looking at the success they've had with it, I think we'll try that too.
What do you, I mean, I feel like town of New Paltz, city of Kingston, very different.
Very.
Like, what do you see as the biggest differences as, I mean, I guess there's some farmland, I don't know, but, I don't know, it just seems like a totally different ballgame.
It is a different, I think it is a totally different ballgame.
And we're the first city to have it.
Uh-huh.
So we're the champions.
Yeah.
We're paving the way here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. We're paving the way. This-
Yeah, you guys are paving the way.
You can tell it's, you know, we've had to learn as we go. I think, I was trying to think about that yesterday, and it seems like, you should or most likely have more opportunities to do historic preservation. And so that's challenging too, because you know, most buildings are owned by someone. And if you can't, our historic preservation commissioner chair is on our board. And he was so excited because he thought we were gonna give grants to people to fix up their historic houses or whatever. We can't do that because that, I don't think the public benefit measure outweighs the benefit to the landowner. And so that's challenging. I mean, there are cities where they do facade easements, very complicated. I think,
With this funding?
no,
Oh, okay,
the city of Philadelphia has a whole
Okay.
program,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
facade
yeah,
easements.
yeah.
But we have yet to really figure out any way that we could spend money for historic preservation, other than identifying a historic farmstead where we would be protecting the whole property. So that may be your challenge, is figuring out some of that.
So when you say we can't use it for historic improvements, that's an attorney interpretation as well, or?
Well, it depends what is in your CPP. You can't do anything that's not in your CPP.
Right.
So, here's an example that has come before us. We have small amounts of bluestone sidewalk in New Paltz. So someone on the Village Historic Preservation Commission came to us and said, well, can we spend CPP money on sidewalks? And well, the first answer was, well, we didn't include that in our plan. We have to update our plan every 5 years. We're updating our plan now. Should we include sidewalks?
When you, can I just say
Yes.
this real quick? Did it say in your plan to update it every 5 years, or is that a law?
That's a requirement.
By the law?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's one question I have.
So we haven't completely resolved that issue, but it turns out it's a very controversial issue in New Paltz for very small amounts of bluestone sidewalk that exist.
Controversial,
Big amounts of.
Yeah, so, I think, we talked about this last night at our meeting. We may choose not to wade into that because it could eat up a lot of money. And it doesn't seem like the primary function of our community preservation plan.
I didn't even think of sidewalks.
Hmm.
I didn't even think of it.
Sorry, I brought it up.
No, I was gonna delete the last 7 seconds.
Well, no, I mean, it's,
Well,
You're saying it has to explicitly say in hours the word sidewalks?
Mhm.
Somebody have it in front of us?
I didn't see
Sorry,
that.
Gary,
I don't think it says sidewalks.
That was.
I I know.
I will say though, as a geologist here, from the geologist's perspective, our bluestone that's native to this area is a lot chemically a lot stronger than the bluestone that they bring in from other locations, like the Pennsylvania mines and stuff.
And it's a
Um,
different color.
It's a different color, but ours is chemically stronger, so you'll notice the newest bluestones that's put in has been weathering a lot faster than the stuff that's been around for 100 years already. So it's actually not necessarily economically responsible to try to bring in the, bluestone from another place because it doesn't stand up to our conditions here.
Well, and the engineering costs to meet ADA are significant. So we haven't wrestled that to the ground yet, but it's just an example of, you get told in different ways, and you have to decide as a board what your original intention was and whether it meets your original intention.
Well, we just want to put out something that makes it accessible. Everyone's interested. My thinking is, that once we get settled on this initial application, I don't know what a second step would look like with the common council. That,
Well, most of the second, third, fourth, and fifth steps aren't gonna be with the common council. They're gonna be your work of identifying, meeting, talking to landowners. And I think that you can inform the council about what you're doing, but they won't have a decision to make until you have a willing landowner.
okay,
Just to close the loop on the sidewalk thing, in local law 8, which establishes the fund, I would guess that this section definitions where it says preservation shall involve one or more of the following, definitely does not say the word sidewalks. I would say the part of it, well, could be interpreted preservation of public access to lands for public use, including stream rights and waterways. I mean, public access to lands for public use could be a sidewalk. It's a stretch, but it's public access to lands. There's also preservation of historic places and properties listed on the New York State Register of Historic Places and or protected under a municipal historic preservation ordinance or law. I don't know if historic places and properties protected under municipal historic preservation ordinance or law, if in the historic districts, the sidewalks are also protected. Kevin, do you know the answer to that?
We try to take that position. Somebody from your attorney's law firm will oppose us.
Why's that?
Why? Because they property rights. Taking a property ownership approach, and that the municipality is overreaching. In fact, we had somebody accuse us of overreaching at the last historic meeting.
Well, okay, so I mean, we could look deeper into interpretation of this, but it definitely does not say the word sidewalks.
I don't see the word sidewalk in the plan, but I see the word historic resources numerous times, and I think we would, again, we might have an ambiguity. We're discussing, we have to resolve.
There are ambiguities.
Yeah,
And when you come up on your 5-year review, it's your opportunity to address some of the ambiguities if you choose to.
Are you able to use the funds to redo the plan?
That's an interesting question. We are updating our maps
Yeah.
to reflect properties that have been protected in the 5 years. And the town is paying for that from the general fund.
Are you just doing the maps or are you changing any of the priorities or the narrative?
We're just changing the maps.
So you didn't hire a firm?
No, oh, yes. I mean, it's under $2,000
Oh, wow.
piece of work.
I think going back to the sidewalk thing, the sidewalk code that was done some years ago,
Yeah.
that covers this and within historic districts and within, covers the bluestone in historic districts and in front of individually listed properties. And it's a bit more ambiguous once you get out of there. It allows the homeowner to do something, but I don't think that would come to the purview of this board. Those properties are outside of the historic district or not individually listed.
But those within the historic district and.
The Bluestone, would be a factor for sure.
I feel like that just changed the whole game.
Sorry.
So,
I mean, we have really reached for whether there is something we can do in the way of historic preservation. And this is the only thing that has been identified that it was even remotely possible. And I don't think our board is leaning towards inclusion of sidewalks.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of natural open space resources that we want and need to protect.
And we don't.
Also, remember, the city owns the Bluestone sidewalks. They own the sidewalks, just the property owner has to maintain them, but the city owns them already.
Right.
So I'm not sure how that would play into this. Maybe New Paltz is different. Maybe you don't own the sidewalks. I don't know.
Yeah, I believe that's the case.
The same as in Kingston. Yeah, it's a generally accepted practice. So maybe it wouldn't come up because the city already owns it. City isn't going to go out and purchase something it already owns, right?
Not purchase, but replace.
Repair,
Repair.
replace.
Well, then that gets into the question before was, the management and stewardship fund, can it go towards things we already own or only towards the things that were purchased with the community preservation fund? Because wouldn't that fall into stewardship and maintenance?
Thank you, Kara. That is a good point, because the stewardship funds can only go for things that are purchased with CPF funds.
Okay.
It can't go for pre-existing.
Okay, so we can't improve existing parks or sidewalks then?
So if we own the sidewalks. we
That
can-
hasn't been our experience with Red Hook's CPF.
So-
They've used funds for other projects.
Yeah, so Red Hook CPF, it was done under a different law, actually.
Okay, it's changed since then.
So Red Hook and Warwick were the two communities that established CPFs independently with the New York State Legislature before the Hudson Valley CPF. So their laws are slightly different than the existing CPF for the Hudson Valley, from which ours flow.
What are you saying is different?
We are able to apply for funds for stewardship or management or like water quality sampling on property that we haven't, or that the CPF hasn't purchased an easement or purchased land.
That's different.
Yeah. But you have an interpretation from the attorney that says that our law doesn't allow that? All right.
It does get a little weird when water travels and so does air. And when you think about natural resources, they aren't, there's only a certain kind that just sits still.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting
Are you,
interpretation.
can you use CPF funds on a property that the CPF has like purchased or been using on at a later date? Because that's something we can do with Red Hook as well. I applied for funds for a trail a couple years after they put an easement on land.
I would think so, yeah.
Very sense of scale too, like how much money is in your fund? How much money is in the Red Hook?
And how long has it been?
You all have like 1.8 million or something.
We have, a little over 1.8. We started in, doesn't go far. We started in collecting the fund in 2021.
Okay.
And we caught this amazing wave of the influx of people and property transactions. It slowed down considerably. This last month was our lowest month, second only to the first month we were doing.
And how much are you bringing in, what would your lowest month have been?
When would it have been?
No, what about months?
I don't have it at the tip of my tongue. I'm gonna say, I can't. But it was
Like over 100,000?
for a month,
Yeah.
under 100,000,
Okay.
way under, way under.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how much does Redhook have?
I don't know the exact.
I think if the last report
must have
is
a lot.
email us.
I mean, with that mega.
Or it's up the whole.
They do have a lot.
Yes.
And yeah.
What did you just say? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Sorry, Red Hook does have a lot of money, yes.
Yeah.
I think they've been around since like 2008.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot.
Yeah, well, but you've also spent a lot.
Yes.
Yeah,
They have.
they have.
We have received a lot, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I speak it publicly?
Yeah,
Okay, so, New Paltz real estate transfer tax.
so look at that last column.
On the bottom, I can't, something going on over here.
You can't make it bigger?
I'm working on it. Something's scratching.
I think it was something like 15,000.
Okay,
So,
so like this month, we brought in 17,
No.
27.
yeah, 12.
Okay, so total you have 400 and
No, the total is a
cumulative to date,
Yeah.
1.8 million.
And you can see the 2022, this is the totals. That's the total per year here.
So annually, they're bringing in 21, they brought in 31,000, 22, they brought in 54,000. and
No.
I'm sorry. In 21, they brought in 313,000. In 22, they brought in 649,000. In 23, they brought in 371. 24, they brought in 470. And I was told if we would have done this last year, we would have brought in like 1.2.
Well, when when
Yeah.
a large commercial property sells, that's a lot of money.
So we have an application. We take in projects, applicants,
Right,
and hopefully, we're in a position where, because this has to be mostly land preservation professionals to wrap around this board. The law, the way it's written, that we can look at, an application, know that the number, the budget that's being proposed is like ridiculous. It's too much, or too
Well-
small.
right. So you want to look back at your plan.
Yeah.
So the property's probably in the plan. You want to look at what its score is. You scored all your properties, right?
Yeah.
And remembering that the score is just a tool, it's not, necessarily a driver, but if it has a score of 18 or 22 or something, that's a high score for us.
Same.
Yeah. Then you sit down with the landowner and you hear what they want. What do they want? Do they want to sell their land? Do they want to protect their land? You have to find out what they want.
So that would be the next stage, is to actually now engage the landowner.
Yeah, and engage probably a conservation partner.
Okay.
Because I appreciate that your board has a lot of people with experience, but the conservation professionals who draft conservation easements day in and day out have a much stronger sense of that than certainly anybody on our board.
Okay,
And so we work closely with them to figure that out.
So those are some early meetings we should have too,
Yeah,
with land trust folks, with
Yeah.
OSI, with Scenic Hudson.
definitely. Because what you need to learn from them are what are their priorities? And what are your priorities? And where is there overlap in priority? And you may already know that because you've worked a lot with Scenic Hudson. But this is like a new chapter, and I think it really makes sense to sit down with them and talk about your shared priorities.
Do you have any land trust representatives on your board?
Yes, we have Jim DeLon, who's the director of the Orange County Land Trust.
And he recuses himself for those kind of conversations?
No, because he only does business in Orange County.
Okay. So we have multiple land trust folks.
That's great, that's great.
Right, so maybe, you know, a future meeting is just like, what is the Kingston Land Trust's priorities? You know, what are folks' priorities?
Right, and share with them, you know, what your plan says and what the direction you think you want to go.
Right.
And we found that it was very revealing to us to talk to OSI and to Senior Cuts and to learn what parts of New Paltz they were interested in, what parts they weren't interested in.
Right.
And it was pretty clear.
Great.
Trying to think what else to share with you. So I sent you the route report just because I think it's sort of an interesting way to look at it. It's an interesting
Yes,
way to.
we tried to design, I tried to design ours the way that you did yours, to look at it over time.
Yeah, and I sent you that matrix, which is sort of steps in the process, and I think I sent one other thing.
You sent landowners from CPP and composite score map.
Yeah, which you basically already have, in your plan, which shows your highest priorities.
Kara, so you said you took about a year to try to get your bearings and figure out, like have these meetings and figure out what everyone else's priorities were. How did you figure out internally what the board's priority was?
I think that it was really driven by looking at that map.
Okay.
And figuring out where there were clusters of properties that were high scoring. And we basically came up with 4 or 5 areas in town where we could see those clusters. And we started going and researching those properties. You know, looking at everything we could find in Parcel Viewer, talking to the land trusts, using our own local knowledge to figure out what the status was on some of those properties.
And did you all agree at the beginning, but how the priorities would go, or was there a negotiation process, or?
I think people were pretty compelled by what the map showed us.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so, you know, we've got a couple focal areas, and we also we spent time the first year, our previous supervisor was very interested in studying the auction opportunities. And what we learned was that by the time, he said, well, you know, we could get a lot of property for very little bit of money. But by the time you do the due diligence on multiple small properties that are up for county auction, it is not a winning strategy.
Okay.
So we have a few of those, but it was not a good use of our money at the time.
And you meet once a month
We meet once a month.
at 8 AM?
I told the board last night that you met at 8 AM and I won't say who said, shoot me. No,
All this people.
we meet at 7. In the evening.
Have people looked at our Kingston map, parcel prioritization map?
Yeah.
And, okay,
We had a copy here last time, and I just looked in my folder and didn't see it.
Yeah, I
So
have it
must have been in
pulled
the-
up, you can see the dark areas of the high priority, that's the Esopus Creek, this is the Ronda Creek. That's Sojourner Truth Park and it's a Putnam Brickyard and Business Park.
So is the park below Sojourner Truth, that's one it's not.
This is more than one property. I don't know if we have the parcels, some of the parcels are visible and some of them aren't. But yeah, this is more than one property here.
Mhm.
I know, the author of the plan Behan.
Yes,
Yeah,
There was a little bit of discussion talking about, yes, the higher scoring parcels have more reasons to be protected,
yeah,
but if, you know, you may never be able to do it. And what becomes a priority is the lower scoring ones.
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, because it's all about having willing landowners.
Well, they did that in the plan. I think they made the level of priority very low.
Yeah,
Wasn't it? Like,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
That was
Oh,
not-
we-
the number.
You had one, you scored one.
Yeah.
What we found,
Okay.
you know, in hindsight, is that our plan is very slanted towards habitat and water resource protection. And it didn't do as good a job as it might have with farmland. So farmland also tends to capture habitat and water resources and all that, so they tend to score reasonably high. But in hindsight, I would have liked to give higher weight to farms, active farms.
And so in the
I don't think we're gonna redo the scoring.
why? This is the opportunity.
Yeah, that's true, but I think we're comfortable enough using it as a tool and recognizing the importance of farmland that we don't need to actually restructure the whole thing.
What I'm hoping is that this board, because you gave us an idea to talk to certain stakeholders who know the answer to this, is that there are projects that are dual,
Yes,
you know, in our first year or two here,
yeah,
that we can fund. And, I'm hoping that's something we'll be able to identify, like, we'll see something, yes, this can be done, it's worthy. And not to get too caught up and get sidetracked on other projects. So.
yeah, that's good. It's good to have a kind of poster child project towards the beginning.
And the bringing up the scoring again, I'm sorry, but my question wasn't answered last time because I don't think anybody understood what I was asking. Two completely feasible things for this area that could happen. Is a property has a 0 value on this mechanical scoring method. And then we find that it's got either vernal pools on it, which wouldn't have come up in that kind of search, or it's got an opening to a mine or a cave, which is completely feasible in Kingston, that would have, you know, endangered bats or other wildlife in it. So do we have a method for reevaluating if something like that comes up where,
Yes.
okay,
There's
where it was a
classic-
0
Right
and now we can
Right
turn
under-
it into 1?
right out of the planning,
Okay.
document where it
Where is
is,
it, okay,
where it
because
is.
last time everybody was like, no, if it's a 0, we're not looking at it at all, but,
Yeah, well, according to that plan, if it's 0, you can't. But you
Right.
can amend the plan, because it's part of, it's Kingston's comprehensive plan,
okay,
planning process. So you would amend that map.
all right,
And Dutchess County has to do this all the time whenever they have a farmland protection implementation grant.
mhm,
They didn't map all the areas with farms.
right.
So farm applies, so they have to amend that map, and it has to go through the whole resolution process.
I mean, it's probably like not gonna happen anytime soon, but I wanted to make sure that we had a mechanism for that to change if something like that comes up.
Yes, it may not be necessary though, because when we were pretty on, the group of us at the CAC and the Kingston Land Trust went through the natural resource inventory.
Well, that's, their vernal pools weren't, the vernal
Vernal
pools weren't
pools was
listed.
something we were looking at.
But they're
Yeah.
not necessarily listed unless they're above a certain size.
Right.
It's, you
Right.
know, or somebody's actually been out there to identify it.
I was thinking more of the cave entrances. I think we've. I think we've
Well, there's been some in
on
town,
that.
there's been some in the city that have been filled in historically, and
Yeah.
they could open again.
Yeah, well, there's one the Kingston Land Trust owns, and it's already.
It's
listed.
colored.
It's colored, yeah,
Yeah, I know that was Tree Cave, yeah.
right. And the same would go with the northeast caves. I mean, that's significantly above.
Yeah, but those are already protected.
Right, exactly. And the same
And
with the
already
wilderness has a few
You're talking
caves,
about
and that's
what's
also
burned out.
protected.
I think ultimately we have to, Casey says, it's a different environment here than from a
Yeah,
largely rural
definitely.
town, rural residential, a lot of houses, it's still rural, to a city,
right.
you know. There's a little bit of farmland up by 587. It's not the same as the town, time votes.
No,
But we have to figure out how much work we're prepared to do.
yes,
And
you mean as a board,
as a board,
yeah,
like how much time, like I can spend some time, but not a whole lot of time, on a day job. So we're, like we said, we're strictly an advisory board, and at some point, the common council and the staff that serves the common council has to take the baton. And that's what, but we can add a lot to that. I think the hope now is just to get just some basic information there, maybe sit with the land trust, figure out their priorities, so the common council can make a very informed decision. And that's, I think the matrix, that whole schedule thing, I'm gonna take another look at that. See
Yeah.
how I can,
and,
Is that-
that was, I wrote that up, in 2021, I guess. And I think it needs to be reworked, because we've learned what's more important and what's less important, but it is all the steps I could think of at the time. And you're right that as a board, you could do a lot of work. I find that, our board, I'm the chair, I'm retired, I have some time to put into it, and so I do a lot of the research and I do a lot of the communications with the land trusts. Because I have the time available to do that. So you have to kind of figure out who's gonna do that.
And you also have access to me in my office.
okay,
Yeah, so like appraisals can be done through my office, and
Okay.
surveys can be done through my
Yeah,
office and all
yeah.
that.
all right.
That's a unique situation.
That's a
we have
great
here.
situation.
Yeah.
I didn't want to forget to share these with you. Nobody had printed anything in the town of New Paltz for so long that they were like, what, you want us to print something? But it's something that we can leave behind if we meet with a landowner. That's just a really basic description of how a conservation easement works, what we're interested in, what our priorities are, who to get in touch with, that kind of thing.
Did you use the fund to write these?
No,
It's great. Thank you so much for coming and visiting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
well, I don't know how helpful it is because you're right, it's a different environment. But I think we've touched on some of the ambiguities and some of the issues that you'll be needing to wrestle with.
Yeah. Do you think there's anyone else from another town that we should also talk with? I mean, I feel like you're the go-to. but is there like
well,
another one?
Marbletown has been successful. They had a project that was all lined up before their CPF passed. And they implemented it immediately. The town borrowed money.
Yeah.
And with the expectation that this permanent revenue source would be available to repay it.
Yeah.
So they were able to do a project right out of the gate.
Yeah, we should talk to them because we did just purchase the Kingston Wilderness property,
Right,
and so
and you did that with your bond, is
we
it?
bonded, but the
You
intent
bonded.
is to pay it back with this fund.
Yeah, yeah.
This fund.
Well, that's a possibility for sure.
Who's the main person at Marbletown?
Well, Rich Peretti is the supervisor. He'd probably be the person to talk to. And I think you seem extremely well on your way.
Well, we're excited about it for sure.
Do you have some projects in mind? Do you have some? Not yet.
I think there's certain organizations that have projects in mind. And I guess we could jump into communications. I guess it's one thing that we have to talk about is conflicts of interest. Because we're an advisory board, it's like someone who's associated with the Kingston Land Trust would recuse from at least discussions of an application. But I don't think they have to write a letter at that point. Like if it goes before the common council, I think someone from this board would have to write a letter stating what their role is, which a certain amount of their wages
I
come
think-
from the money,
I
would they be
think
working on the easement,
Yeah, my experience, our experience with that is we have several people who live in New Paltz who work for Scenic Hudson, and we asked them if they were, one of them, if he was willing to serve on the board, and he declined. Because Scenic Hudson has their own set of rules about
Oh, okay.
participating locally and the conflicts that causes for Scenic Hudson, so, you know, I was sorry to miss their expertise, but they chose not to participate.
We could do it that way, but then at least 2 members, I think.
So,
So it's something we have to do, but I think we have leeway, because like I said, there's no contract, there's no binding agreement.
right, right,
So we just, once it goes to the common council, it's a different story.
right.
And I think we're gonna take a look at what you sent, and there'll be a second version of what we'll call a pre-application, I guess, at this point. And we'll take what we think is, again, your tax sale comment, and then we'll have another go at this
Mhm.
and all that. And I don't know if just putting it out there, we're gonna get applications and put it on the City of Kingston website. I think to jumpstart, the process of really getting a pipeline in, we have to engage at least a few of the stakeholders around here.
Yeah, well, that's what you want, is a pipeline of potential projects. For sure, and I now wanna try what Gardner did, and send out a letter to all the projects that, have a high score, and say, this is what we're doing, we've been doing it for 5 years, we're still meeting with landowners, and we'd love to meet with you if you're interested. See what happens.
And those meetings and those conversations about specific parcels you have in an open meeting, correct?
No. No, not generally. Generally, 1 or 2 board members go and meet with a landowner.
Okay, but do you speak about specific parcels and owners in your public meetings
We do.
before they know about it?
That's an interesting question.
So like if somebody is watching YouTube or watches it tomorrow and they say, oh, they said my name, they're interested in my property.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't really, no, we don't really.
Then how do you talk about prioritization without talking about on the parcel level?
We use parcel numbers and we use our maps, but we do try to be sensitive to not talking about people's parcels in advance of talking to them. And it's the same with, when you're negotiating with people about the value of their land, that you have to be sensitive to that too.
Right. Okay. So you might discuss a parcel based on the parcel number, which is still public, still
Yeah.
identifying it, but
Yeah.
not necessarily saying like, oh, Julie Bubble's house.
No. And, we generally talk about areas of town that we're interested in, and it's once we've engaged with the landowner and they've said they're interested in working with us, that, people might watch a YouTube and hear about that property.
So your reports, updates, CPF Coalition.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you so much.
And, I'm interested in learning from you as you go along as well, because, we've raised a number of questions here today that we're still wrestling with, so.
Yes.
Karen, I'm sorry, I have.
Sure.
When did you first put out your call for proposals? How long did it take your committee to put that?
A call for the proposal.
Well, so an application process, when did you have that?
When did it go live?
That's a good question. I don't honestly remember, but it was sometime within the first year
Okay,
that we had an application and we're ready to go.
okay,
All right,
thank you.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was a wealth of information, and we appreciate it deeply.
All right, we'll go team go.
Yes.
You too.
Bye.
All right, see ya.
Before you move on, I was just gonna say a lot of what you see here in the really dark, some of Kingston Land Trust's focus has been in a lot of the really dark areas. So we're sort of aligned, we've been aligned
Okay,
as part of the process, doing the natural resource inventory, the open space plan and the community preservation plan, we were working. I'm on the CAC, right, so, and I'm on the land trust, so and Ted was on it for a while. And if I want to go way back in the early days, we had Greg Swanty, who was a founding member of the CAC. So the Kingston Land Trust always had an interest in this process, in the mapping, and it aligns with more or less with the goals. I think Greg Shaheen from the Land Trust could come and give it a somewhat different presentation, right, and tweak it more than when I'm just giving you the broad brush overview. But, yeah, we're pretty closely aligned to that map.
Well, and it should also be noted that if we just look at that map, and maybe that's something we could do in a future meeting, is a lot of what's dark is already preserved. Whether it's now the wilderness property, the land of Black Hands, Sojourner Truth State Park, a lot of it is already preserved.
So we should update the map and have a different color for stuff that's already preserved.
Well, we can't change the CPP, but
No,
we
but we
could
could
create
up-
another map that's like
Yes.
in these
Show
dark
us what's
areas,
already
these are the parts that are not.
Right, like put a
Yes.
hash mark saying that it's already preserved.
Does anyone have GIS
Yes.
talents? Yes?
I do too.
Oh,
If you want to do it,
it would be great if one of you could do that. I have not that skill. Or,
Yeah, I'll need the layers that, I'll need that access to the layers that we have already, or I'll need something. I need to look at that map to see what I need, actually.
okay, so if you want to look at that and then,
the shape files.
The shape
Yes.
files. Yeah, I mean, I can download obviously the county stuff.
Perfect.
And then I guess we have the scoring on
That
that
would be-
other spreadsheet. So,
Behance shape files.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, the ones that the CAC had some issues, we don't need to discuss that at the moment, but, yeah, if we're going with Behan, I think we're in good shape.
right, and I'll just say with I know the Welcome Valley Land Trust doesn't really do that much in Kingston at all. But we do have the rail trail that goes, to Kingston, to Rockwell Lane, and then that little bit to 32. We would be interested in partnering or helping to get a better, safer connection into the Kingston Green Line instead of having to run on 32. So if there is land that is protectable and a trail can get through to make that connection, because I don't know how many have ridden on 32 here, but it's awful. So, we would be interested in trying to help facilitate that.
Yeah, I had worked on that, so did Tim Whedon, when he was at the Land Trust. And Tim, well, I worked with Tim and Jennifer Schwartz Berkey McDonald, formerly in your office at some point in time. Right, yeah, we put mapping together for OSI, for Bob Annenberg to look at.
I know
And
it's
then he
been,
brought partner Judas in and reworked work that we had done. We came up with recommendations, none of which were,
I know it's something that's been worked
So-so.
on, but when
Yeah.
if we're discussing what other land trusts might have interests in
Right.
Kingston, that's something that the Welcome Valley Land Trust would be interested in helping to facilitate.
we can discuss this offline, I think, and where it was left.
So, you say something?
Yes.
Okay.
Regarding Kara's earlier question about the vernal pools, I wasn't clear on whether there's already a criteria created or that we need to create a criteria.
I'll have to look through so to create the CPP maps, we had a whole matrix of like, if it has this present and it gets this amount of points. I don't know if it has the plan,
So,
but it's in the plan, and so I don't know if present vernal pools is one of those. Are you looking at it right now?
I'll just do a search.
And
of the plan
basically, the
for-
DEC just changed their wetland regulations
Right.
to help include vernal pools, but now that means that someone has to go out and physically identify them because they're too small
Good.
to show up in aerial imagery and all the other things they used to do before.
If it wasn't in there, it'd be two amendments. We'd have to write,
Right.
what it is and then map it.
It's,
We just have to map it.
It's there.
it's
Yeah,
a,
it's in
It's
there.
in
So
there.
just-
So we just have to map it.
just have-
3 points plus a 300-foot buffer. 300-foot.
so 3 points, so that was the highest possible score you could get, 3 points. So just to be mindful of time, because we talked about an hour and a half meeting, right? I don't know if you want, if there's anything other.
There's nothing else for me.
I just wanted to mention the CPF coalition, so if you're not aware that, there are folks from around the valley that meet on the fourth Tuesday at 3 p.m. on Zoom, to talk about community preservation plans and funds. It is coordinated by city cousin Carly Fraccaroli, and I can circulate the Zoom link. It is mostly communities that are working to pass it. So I was serving as for the first year, it was like, I need help, and then it was like, hey, we're helping you, and now it feels like it's not as relevant, but it is a cohort of other people that we can kind of learn from and connect with, so I will just let you know. I'll share that soon. And then the one other thing I wanted to just say before we close is, I just created this agenda based on what I thought we talked about at the last meeting, but we talked about a lot today, and I don't know if you want me to get someone from, if we want to just discuss at each meeting what we want to do in the next one, or if you want me and Bert and I to discuss it, perhaps prioritization is an important thing for the next meeting, what do we, bring big maps and we can look at the maps on the table and just talk high level. Or if we want to bring in other folks from St. Hudson, OSI, or Land Trust, or Walker Valley Land Trust, maybe we're not there
We're
yet.
not there yet.
Okay, so prioritization,
Prioritization feels
Yeah.
Like priority.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
we-
prioritize prioritization.
So if we understand what we want,
yeah,
and then we'll see how it dovetails with what they're looking for.
okay, great,
We'll get a better discussion, and we can talk more about the application process,
great,
and it'll,
I think that can wait until after we do the prioritization and talk to the Kingston Land Trust. I think it's a great place to start, and it really is a great place to start, but I think I'd like to learn more about priorities that we have and Kingston Land Trust and the other land trusts. And then be able to go back and look at it and make sure, evaluate that this is actually gonna find the things. Because it's a great place to start, but there might be tweaks that we wanna do.
Yeah.
And also, I am curious actually about exploring a little bit more what it means to be the first city to have this. Because that does mean there's a difference and that community preservation means something different, possibly. And so,
how
I
do you
don't know.
want to do that?
I don't know, but does anyone else feel that way?
I mean, we're
Because
the
we're
first
leading
city
the way
in
on
New York
something.
State.
For the first in New York State to have.
So are there any other cities in the country that have CPF?
Oh,
Like
Yeah,
maybe
that's a
we
good
reach
idea.
out to them.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right, so maybe someone can do research on the other cities.
Okay,
And would it necessarily be called that? I mean, because it could be a similar thing under a different, slightly different name.
Right. Well, essentially, it would probably be a real estate transfer tax or some sort of
okay, yeah,
transfer tax.
Mhm.
okay.
That's the key, not just that we have a plan for prioritization, that could be any community USA that has open space plan.
Mhm.
We have a dedicated fund for preservation.
All right, I'll look into that.
So like the next
Do we have for the next meeting?
Oregon.
I also want to mention that even, we can still look at the similarities, the differences, compare and contrast, but at the same time, I guess, you guys are talking about different laws that apply to different places, so
Yeah.
we have to take that into consideration.
Pretty strict.
Do we have quorum for the next meeting? It's the 28th of May.
I plan on being.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do it.
Zoom?
Yeah.
The prioritization, and report from Eli on cities doing this.
And I don't know, no pressure, but we don't necessarily need the map made, but to know what is already preserved, protected.
Right, perhaps that will happen, maybe not.
Yeah, I should be able to unless there's something weird happening, but.
Perfect.
With our GIS.
And if everyone can bring your,
Exactly.
bring your plans with you next week, month, so
Okay,
we have our plans, but I hope you can be with us. Okay.
motion to adjourn?
Casey
Okay.
seconds the
So
motion.
you're making a motion.
Um,
You're making a motion?
no,
Oh, I motion.
you motion, I'll second that motion. Everyone, who wants, that's what I thought, unanimous.
Who wants to go to work? I'm not sure.
9:34.
So what did we bring in? Did we bring in?
The-
Just